have you ever stopped to think about our current moment, right now, not just as another day on the calendar, but as a destination? Like we've all been on this long, winding road trip together, and this is where we've ended up. The source material for this explainer kicks off with that very idea, and then it asks a really sharp question. If today is the destination we all work to get to, why does it feel so chaotic?
So yeah, if this is our destination, what was the path that led us here? According to the source, it wasn't a single wrong turn. It was a journey that started decades ago as something that felt more like a slow leak, a leak of lies, and a little bit of radiation.
You see, this story, at least as the source tells it, doesn't start with some big explosion. It starts with a slow, creeping radiation of public trust. We have to go back to the 1970s, a time when a few key events lined up in just the right, or maybe I should say, just the wrong way. And they would fundamentally change how people in America saw the very institutions they were supposed to rely on.
Okay, look at the timing here, because it's pretty wild. First, back in '74, you have the death of Karen Silkwood, a nuclear whistleblower, under really suspicious circumstances. Then, a few years later, a huge Hollywood movie comes out, The China Syndrome, and it's all about a nuclear power plant disaster. And then, get this, just 13 days after that movie hits theaters, fiction becomes terrifying reality at 3 Mile Island. The source argues this created the absolute perfect storm of public fear and suspicion around nuclear power.
And this is the moment that suspicion really hardened into straight-up distrust. The official story from the people in charge about 3 Mile Island was, hey, it's a minor accident, nothing to worry about, go back to your lives. But the reality, which took years to come out, was completely different. There was a hydrogen gas explosion. The core did partially melt down, and a full-blown catastrophe was avoided, not by some heroic effort, but by what the source calls random dumb luck.
So according to the source, the TMI cover-up was this massive watershed moment. It wasn't just about a nuclear accident anymore. It was about this chilling realization that the most powerful institutions, we're talking the corporation that owned the plant, the government regulators, even some in the media, could and absolutely would lie to the public about something that could literally kill them. And that's when this deep, deep seed of cynicism was planted in the American mind.
For a couple of decades, that seed of cynicism kind of just sat there in the soil. But then, the source argues, a massive national trauma came along, and that trauma was the water and fertilizer that would make it sprout in a powerful, chaotic, and completely new way.
9/11. Now, the source here isn't focused on the horrific events of that day, which we all remember. Instead, it zooms in on the aftermath, the confusion, the anger, the raw emotion, and how the country tried to make sense of something that felt, to so many people, completely incomprehensible. And to understand that aftermath, the source says you actually have to look at the political climate before 9/11. It points to this infamous quote from 1996 from Madeleine Albright about the devastating sanctions on Iraq. The source uses this to paint a picture of a pretty harsh foreign policy environment that, it argues, was already creating a lot of resentment that would become tragically relevant after the attacks.
So into this atmosphere of trauma and confusion, a public that was already primed not to trust official stories, well, they started asking questions. And according to the source, these questions quickly spiraled into full-blown conspiracy theories, as all sorts of alternative explanations rushed in to try and fill that vacuum of understanding.
Now, the source makes a very controversial argument right here. It claims that what fueled some of these theories wasn't just trauma, it was also, it says, a deep-seated prejudice. An inability for some people to believe that 19 Arab men could pull off such a sophisticated and devastating attack. And that disbelief, the source argues, is what made inside job theories feel more plausible to some people than the official story.
And this is where the two big threads of this story finally get tied together. You have the systemic distrust born from those nuclear lies back in the '70s, and it collides with the trauma-fueled conspiracy mindset of the post-9/11 world. And the result, the source claims, is what it calls an age of collective madness.
So this is the roadmap the source lays out. It starts with that systemic distrust from 3 Mile Island. Then, the trauma of 9/11 and the war in Iraq creates this huge demand for alternative stories. Then, those theories go political. They go mainstream with the birther movement, which used conspiracy to attack the legitimacy of the president. And the final step? You have a population that has been so primed by this whole history that it becomes vulnerable to the idea of alternative facts.
And to really hammer home its point about the confused aftermath, the source points to this data. It highlights that even though not a single one of the 9/11 hijackers was from Afghanistan or Iraq, those were the two countries the U.S. invaded.
The source presents this as a kind of collective punishment, a reaction that was born from pure rage and a desire for vengeance, not from precise, factual intelligence.
So what's the end of the line on this journey? According to the source, it's a population that is uniquely vulnerable to being manipulated, and it gives the Jade Helm 15 incident as a prime example. This was a totally routine U.S. military exercise in Texas, but Russian disinformation agents started spreading this conspiracy online that it was a secret plot by the president to invade Texas. And you know what? It worked. The governor of Texas actually ordered the state guard to monitor the U.S. Army. For the source, this was the moment that proved the madness had gone completely mainstream.
Which brings us right back to where we began. The source started by framing our present day as a destination. So after walking us through this long, tangled history of distrust, trauma, and conspiracy, it leaves us with this final, really provocative question. If the beliefs we've held have led us, step by step, to this very strange place we're in now, what beliefs do we need to choose, right now, to create a different destination for our future?